He and Dottie will walk in.
Yeah.
Shut the door.
Okay, good morning. We are picking up in Deuteronomy 19, verse 8. And I was telling Janice and Wanda that I don't know if you were, maybe Mickey. I'm so excited because after chapter 19, we get new stuff. It's still Deuteronomy, but it's new. Yeah, so let's get through 19. Verses 8 through 10. And I'm going to start with you, Wanda.
And if the Lord your God enlarges your territory as he has sworn to your fathers, and gives you all the land that he promised to give to your fathers, provided you are careful to keep all this commandment, which I command you today, by loving the Lord your God, and by walking ever in his ways, then you shall add 3 other cities to these 3, lest innocent blood be shed in your land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance, and so the guilt of the bloodshed will be upon you.
So last week we left off talking about cities of refuge. So this is still picking up on the same topic. Notice it says, if the Lord enlarges your territory. So this isn't talking about the promised land, because God already said that's yours. This is talking about if you expand beyond the promised land. You need more cities. Get ready. Because you have to have these cities close enough for everyone to get to. So this is a conditional component. Also notice in verse 9 it says, provided you are careful to keep all this commandment. Again, not plural. All this, everything I've told you, is one body. You keep it all. You don't pick and choose what you like, what you don't like. Talk about the whole book of Deuteronomy. So the Israelites have to do their part to get this blessing. God already promised he's going to give them the promised land. They have to do some things here. But if they want to enlarge their territory, they got to obey all this commandment.
Well, and back in 12:20, it says, when the Lord your God enlarges your territory as he has promised you. So.
And I'd have to go back and look on whether there he's talking about the promised land, or because this one is definitely conditional.
So.
If you enlarge your territory.
Isn't it interesting, though, when you see some of the things that are happening now, how big the promised land was and how, just with the different things that happened,
Yeah.
so small compared to what he gave them to begin with.
Yeah.
So, that might be why.
Yeah, because they've never obeyed all this commandment. So, of course, again, if they expand, they need more cities of refuge so that anyone fleeing from an avenger of blood can get to that place. So this place of refuge, nothing new there. Now, typically other places used a shrine or something as a place of refuge, a place of sanctuary. You ran, and it was kind of like you tagged home and you were safe. But the idea of a city as a refuge, that is unique to the Israelites.
And because now some churches are sanctuaries for people.
They are... They are considered sanctuaries. The police are not allowed to go and arrest people, and
we even think about babies can be left there without.
Yeah. So that kind of thing's changing, but that's what it used to be. I don't know if police can go in and arrest people.
So how many cities are there? Because
there are 3 on the right side of the Jericho River. 3 to be in the promised land, and if they expand the territory, 3 more. So we're talking 9. If they expand it even more, they just have to keep adding more cities.
And I think we've always heard about the 6.
They don't ever expand to get. Yeah, they. In fact, my next note was they never do this. They never get the extra 3 cities because they never obey all this commandment. There's some new cities assigned in Joshua 20, but apparently no follow through on that. So, okay, so let's look at verses 11 through 13.
But if a man hates his neighbor and lies in wait for him, assaults and kills him, and then flees to one of these cities, the elders of his town shall send for him, bring him back from the city, and hand him over to the avenger of blood to die. Show him no pity. You must purge from Israel the guilt of shedding innocent blood, so that it may go well with you.
So you can imagine if someone murdered someone else and they knew an avenger of blood was going to come after them, they would try to flee to one of these cities. And once they reached one of these cities, the judges at the gate were to determine whether this death was an accident or murder. And if it was murder, go away. Go meet your fate. That avenger of blood, you're in his hands. They weren't allowed to enter the walls. God was just as concerned about punishing the guilty as he was about protecting the innocent. That last statement, so that it will go well with you. If they were lenient on these things, it would not go well with them. Kind of remind you of something? Some country that's things slide, and how well that. I mean, if you don't punish,
Right.
you know, there's no deterrent. So that seems to be about where we're at. God wants it to go well with us, but we got to do our part, and we haven't been. Okay, so now's another one of those times where it seems like a 180-degree turn. But again, this section is about telling the judges what their jobs are.
And the judges were part of the Levites, do you think?
It seems like Levites were probably part of it, or city leaders.
Of that refuge.
Yeah, it seemed like from last week's study, the Levites were maybe the second level, and the city leaders are the first level, maybe. I can't.
The priest.
The Levitical priests. Now, Deuteronomy mixes up, lots of times they don't mix anything up, but Deuteronomy calls the Levites priests a lot, where we know Aaron and his sons are the priests.
High priest.
Yeah, the high priest, and the Levites are priests, kind of more like deacon, elder. But we're going to see them in one of these chapters. They're sacrificing things too. So they are priests, but they're not high priests.
Well, if we wanted to put it, it's like the Pope and the
Cardinals or whatever they are.
the Cardinals or whatever under.
Yeah.
But
Okay, so verse 14. Mickey, is that you?
It's me, but I didn't hear what you said.
14.
No, just 14.
So-
You shall
sorry.
not remove your neighbor's landmark, which the men of old have set in your inheritance, which you will inherit in the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess.
Okay, we've seen this before. They would mark their land by putting up rocks. That's where my land ended. They would do communal farming. They would help each other with the farming and things like that. But each family had their field marked, and they got the profit from that field. But everybody helped everybody else. So it talks about these were set from men of old. It's one of those things that a lot of people try to figure out what it means, and they got different interpretations. So, of course, it's one of those things that It's not a theological matter. Some say this means that the boundaries were set by the older generation, which is kind of hard because the boundaries haven't been set yet.
They hadn't gotten there.
Some say it means you're not to throw out these boundaries because they're old. Others say that this shows that this book couldn't have been written by Moses because there are no boundaries yet. They're stretching. So not sure exactly what that means, the men of old. So it's not an important thing to dwell on. So the important thing is, if you moved those rocks, you were stealing land. Land was life. You didn't want people getting away with moving boundaries. Now, Roman law said this kind of thing was a capital punishment. Kill them. But the Bible doesn't say that. The Bible doesn't allow capital punishment in the matter of property. But I assume they just had to give the land back. It doesn't say what the punishment is, but it's not kill them. It just says don't do it. Okay, Mickey, you should have taken the last one. 15 through 20.
One witness shall not rise against a man concerning any iniquity or any sin that he commits, but by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses the matter shall be established. If a false witness rises against any man to testify against him of wrongdoing, then both men in the controversy shall stand before the Lord, before the priests and the judges who serve in those days. The judges shall make careful inquiry, and indeed, if the witness is a false witness who has testified falsely against a brother, then you shall do to him as he thought to have done to his brother. So you shall put him away. So you shall put away the evil from among you. And those who remain shall hear and fear, and hereafter shall not again commit such evil doing. 21? No.
Nope, that's it.
Okay.
So we get the witness thing again. We've seen the witness thing before, but we get some new information here. In Hebrew, and in some translations, you see lots of the use of the word any. It highlights the fact that 2 or 3 witnesses were needed in any testimony. You never rely on one witness. Now, there are times where you only have one witness, but you have other evidence, and that's considered a witness. God wanted them to be so careful about dispensing justice in the right way. So this is about when those witnesses disagree. They're to question the 2 witnesses and see which one seems more confused. See if they can figure out which one is not seeing things clearly. It's not necessarily saying, well, one's lying, but maybe their viewpoint is a little confused. Because you don't see them saying lie anywhere, or libel, or but it could be. They just, people see things different ways. And they are to question them diligently, not just on the surface. Now, if they found that one of the witnesses just gave false testimony, then whatever crime the original person is being tried for, they get the punishment. So if you're going to be a witness somewhere, yeah, it's another one of those things where gosh, these punishments are harsh. You'd think it's a real deterrent. In fact, we see God saying this is going to deter other people from bringing false witness. Now, we don't do this. I mean, you can imagine how trials would be if anytime someone perjured themselves, whatever the person was being tried for, they got that punishment. That would change things. Yeah. So, and look at how things are going with our justice system. There's no deterrent. I mean, you can be put in jail and things like that, but no real deterrent. It's not scary to be a false witness.
It really was. It is dependent on the value of what you.
Yeah.
Did. And I think $1,000 or whatever it is that they can. I wonder why that became.
Yeah.
Important. It changed a lot.
Yeah. Well, and depending on how much money you have, some people $1,000 is nothing. Yeah. Okay, verse 21. I'm sorry. We've skipped the table. Yeah. We're missing that whole end of the table.
Yeah, we are.
Okay, your eye shall not pity. Life shall be for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot.
So we've seen this before. In legal terms, it's called lex talionis, and it's whatever it is, whatever happened, you're going to pay back like for like. And that's not really what this is about. In reality, when someone wrongs you, you want to go back and give them more than what you want to destroy them and things like that. That was typical, that they'd want to just wipe that person off the face of the earth for something they did. And so this was to stop them from going beyond. They could go less. They were not to be after revenge, but justice. This limits that justice. Jesus quoted this in Matthew 5:38 and 39. He doesn't say the principle is wrong. He says it's wrong to use this as an obligation to get even. That's what a lot of the rabbis were teaching in that time. You have to do this. It was about personal revenge. But remember who Moses is talking to here. He's talking to the judges. Mm-hmm. You have to be just in the punishments. Okay, chapter 20, new stuff, finally. Yay. Stuff we haven't really seen before. War. We're going to talk about war. And it makes sense that this follows after the section about homicide, because homicide is about unjust killing, where war is about just killing, when the war is when God wants you to have. When he tells you to go to war, that is not murder. That is just killing. What movie was it? Yeah. What movie was I watching the other day? And they said, I forgot what movie, the big red one. And Lee Marvin said, there was one soldier, Mark Hamill, by the way, he said, I can't murder anyone. And Lee Marvin said, it's not murder, it's killing. We don't murder, we kill. Oh, that's our Sunday school lesson. Ecclesiastes 3:3 says, there's a time to kill. Now, Israel isn't unfamiliar with war. They've been fighting. But God here is talking about holy war. It's war done in the name of God, commanded by him. The rules are controlled by God, and the glory of the battle goes to God. So, Deuteronomy 20, verse 1.
When you go to the war against your enemies and see horses and chariots and an army greater than yours, do not be afraid of them, because the Lord your God, who brought you up out of Egypt, will be with you.
In the middle of a sentence. So they aren't to enter the promised land as sightseers. They're entering the promised land as warriors. So, but there's certain instructions that God is giving about these battles with the Canaanites. There's going to be other battles with people that are not Canaanites, but they're starting with battles with the Canaanites. We've talked about this before, how Israel is kind of they're in the trade route path between all these mighty nations. Poor Israel. You know, if you wanted to go to Egypt, from Egypt to where Assyria is going to be, you went through Israel. You didn't go through that desert. So they were being trampled on all the time through history. God wants them to be prepared. They're going to face mightier armies, better equipped armies. These armies are going to have horses and chariots. We don't see chariots with Israel until Saul's day. If they're obedient, they enlarge their territories and obey all the commandment, other nations are going to want their land. Throughout history, other nations have wanted that little piece of land.
Still fighting about it.
Yeah, still fighting about that little piece of land. There are always going to be enemies for them to fight. So imagine you're out there tending your fields and you look up and there's a line of chariots. Chariots were mighty weapons of war.
Maybe like tanks now.
Yeah,
or something.
yeah, pretty intimidating. Now, any logical person would look up and go, "Uh-oh, I'm in trouble." But God doesn't want them to be afraid. Moses doesn't do anything to downplay the danger. Yes, those chariots are dangerous. Now, an interesting thing about Israel, chariots are not super useful in Israel because they don't have a lot of flat roads and that you want to bring chariots on. In fact, we're going to see battles where the other armies have chariots and they get all stuck in the mud. But that's, God protecting them again too. But anyway, there will be people that come with chariots. And if the road isn't muddy, danger.
Yeah.
So again, Moses doesn't downplay the enemy. I know me personally, I've had times where I downplay the danger of Satan. Because I know God is all powerful and he's going to destroy Satan. But Satan is a danger. So,
But we shouldn't much give him power and knowledge.
yeah, we shouldn't give him more power, but we should be aware
Yes.
that he is out and working in the world.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Walking around us like roaring lions, seeking whom we may devour.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep.
You hear it on the news, and I hate to bring that up, but I mean, Israel is adamant that they must kill Hamas. and let's destroy them.
Yes.
I wonder if they, if they know the scriptures enough that, yes, God says destroy evil.
Yeah.
Don't be
Because
like
they are adamant. And then here we are, we'll back off, ceasefire.
Yeah. Well, and it's back to you leave Hamas alive, and they're just coming back. And yeah.
And how many times here he told them to destroy everyone there, and they kept something.
And our world says, oh no.
How they learn that way.
But yeah, it's the world's perspective is, I mean, and of course which true, a concern over the Palestinian lives that have been lost. But I mean, they allowed Hamas to come in and take over,
But yeah,
and so they're complicit with that. So
they're killing their own people.
Mm-hmm.
Too. But now, since we're talking about that, did anybody listen from Hamas' son, who was founder of Hamas? He's talking. I don't know his name, but this morning I was
I
listening.
don't remember who founded Hamas.
Oh yeah,
I don't remember who.
maybe I will send you that.
Yeah.
He's in University of Michigan, and he talking to students. He explaining very nice.
Yeah.
That's
the problem.
He is,
Yeah.
but then he doesn't talk for Hamas.
Oh.
No, he's the son of Hamas who left and who they calling him traitor or so on.
Yeah, I'm
Simply
sure.
that he's a Christian now. He's living here in the U.S. It's amazing how he's talking.
Yeah.
So that's why I was late. I was listening.
Okay, so God says, don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of those chariots. And it's not a suggestion. It's an order. Do not be afraid. How could they possibly be afraid? They have the secret weapon. They have God. They have the evidence that God had protected them over and over and over again. He had brought them out of Egypt, and Egypt was the mightiest army known in their world. And God just wiped them out. They're to go back and remember how God did that when they're facing these battles. God wants them to depend on Him in these battles. That's still true. In a world that cries out, be independent, stand on your own 2 feet. God wants us to stand on Him. When people say, God's a crutch, yep, He is, and I like that crutch.
mine too.
Yeah.
Isn't it? I mean, I think human nature says we got to figure. We got to kind of figure this, understand the whole thing. We don't really. We just need to trust God.
Yeah.
Satan doesn't change his tactics. He always doing the same thing.
It's interesting. The footnote I have in my Bible here says, these laws on warfare, especially verses 16 to 18, may seem to be at odds with teaching of the New Testament, but 3 things should be kept in mind. 1, they applied specifically to securing the promised land. 2, the Israelite armies were to offer terms of peace before attacking a city, which was in verse 10. And 3, assuming the rightfulness of Israel's cause. These laws have actually helped to limit the loss of life in warfare.
Yep.
Interesting.
Okay, let's look at verse 2 through 4.
Just
You just read? Okay, that's me. Okay. And when you draw near to the battle, the priest shall come forward and speak to the people, and shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, today you are drawing near for battle against your enemies. Let not your heart faint. Do not fear or panic or be in dread for them. For the Lord your God is He who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies, to give you the victory. So picture Braveheart, only as a priest. writing in, well, I don't think he wrote it, but he's standing there giving them the talk. I mean, every good war movie has a time where the leader comes and gives them the talk. Did you know that's biblical? God said do that with the priests. And when it says the priest, it means the priest. It means the high priest is to be out there. He's not to be hiding somewhere away. He is supposed to be in front of the battle. Where do you use in a battle? Where do you usually put your most important people? Way in the back. But not then. The priest is giving them the talk. One commentator said that it kind of indicates that if the high priest is there, so's the Ark of the Covenant. We know we see later battles where, the Ark is led into battle. But we don't see it mentioned here. And my thought was, okay, every time they brought the Ark out while they were traveling, they covered it with all the grapes and everything else. Are they doing that for the battle too? Or
I can't picture that.
I don't know. They don't mention it. And remember, the priests are not in the army. When they did that census earlier, the priests were not part of that count because they are not fighting men. But still, they have an important job. They are to be there and encourage. And later, we're going to see them and Jericho. They're the band. They're the marching band that goes in front of them when they're marching around them. The priests were the instrumentalists. Okay, so the priests tell them 3 reasons not to be afraid. God is with them. God fights their enemies. And ultimately, God saves them. If they are just obedient to God, they are guaranteed to win. Now, if they're not obedient to God, we've already seen that happen once. After the 12 spies came back and Israel said, oh no, we don't want to go in. And God got mad at them and they said, okay, we're going to go in. And they lost that battle because God didn't tell them to go in. But if they had gone in the first place when God told them to, they would have won that battle.
This reminds me to go back to John 14:1. Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me.
Mm-hmm.
Because they heard, do not fear or panic. Don't let your heart be troubled.
It'd be interesting. One of us needs to look up next week. How many times does the Bible say, don't be afraid?
Well, what was it Lisa told us the other week in Bible study? Do not fear is 365 times in the Bible, one for each day.
Ah.
And then we also going through sickness or something. This is our battle, and we have to say to ourselves, I was saying to myself, do not be afraid. Fear not.
Yes. And then we hear, listen, here, listen.
Yeah.
Isaiah, listen, here.
Okay, so verse 4, where it says give you victory, or yours may say deliver, or help, or save. The Hebrew word used there is yasha. It is the root word for Yeshua, Jesus. The idea is a place of safety, a place that is not full of distress, not full of danger. God is there. Yeshua is there, providing a place of safety. Okay, let's look at verses 5 through 9.
Then the officer shall speak to the people, saying, is there any man who has built a new house and has not dedicated it? Let him go back to his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man dedicate it. And is there any man who has planted a vineyard and has not enjoyed its fruit? Let him go back to his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man enjoy its fruit. And is there any man who has betrothed a wife and has not taken her? let him go back to his house, lest he die in battle, and another man take her. And the officer shall speak further to the people and say, Is there any man who is fearful and faint-hearted? Let him go back to his house, lest he make the heart of his fellows melt like his own. And when the officers have finished speaking to the people, then commanders shall be appointed at the head of the people.
Okay, this makes no sense at all from a military standpoint. Send an able-bodied man home.
Right.
The only one that makes sense is if he's fearful and faint-hearted.
Yeah. So, notice there's no condemnation for any of these that are being sent home. Even the ones that are fearful. No condemnation.
Don't
So
you think that's a little bit of what happens though with, I'm not sure that it did, but there were lots of excuses not to go to war that they could use if they were in college or, so I don't know, if they, I don't know
Yeah.
if they do that.
And-
I don't know.
And so the idea is kind of, do you want a soldier fighting whose mind is not
Right,
there,
no.
who just wants to get back home to his fiance or his field? God wanted people that were focused. He wants focused soldiers. He still wants us to be focused.
I mean, it depends now the country. In my country, every man has to go to army. My husband, he finished college and then he went for 1 year. Whether like it or not like it, or his mind was there, but he has to be trained.
Yeah.
Well, in reality, that's what we said here, but then we found lots of, when we had the draft,
Mm-hmm.
still, everybody at 18 had to
You had to
sign up.
register and hope your number didn't come up.
To tell you the truth, I don't know where that really ended,
I don't
or
remember.
why it ended. I mean, because I had boys that age, and I was before they turned 18, and something happened between 17 and 18 that they didn't.
Well, I believe after the Vietnamese
Vietnam.
War, then we had enough people in the military. In fact, they were being really picky about who they chose,
Right.
who they allowed to be in the military, because we didn't need as many bodies.
Kind of interesting, though. You could probably never do that again.
Probably not. And
And really, the kind of the patriotism kind of changed.
Yeah. So, God told them to send any soldiers home that had unfinished business. If they had a new home that they hadn't gotten to use at all, they just built a home. If they had a vineyard that just finally started producing crops, and they don't get, if they find the battle, they may never get to taste those crops. Or if they're engaged, their minds are going to be home. So their bodies may as well be home too. And then the fear. Yeah, fear makes sense. Fear is contagious. God only wanted willing, brave soldiers. And of course, they're fighting in their promised land, which give, or in their land, which gives a whole new impetus. I mean, our last few wars have been fighting overseas for other people when it's your land. That's a whole different feeling. It's more protecting. God didn't want military service to get in the way of family responsibilities. What good was it for the Jewish people if their army defeated the enemy, but things were falling apart back home? One of our online viewers, Chris, said Nixon saw ending the draft as an effective way to undermine the anti-Vietnam War movement, since he believed affluent youths would stop protesting the war once their own probability of having to fight in it was gone. So that's why the draft ended, apparently. So what was left were people that were fully committed to this battle. The size of the army was not important to God.
Because he could use whatever he had.
We will see him use a smaller army with Gideon.
Whenever you, with Gideon,
Yeah,
eliminated people.
Gideon started off with an army of 32,000, too big.
Ended up with what, 300?
He sent home the ones who were afraid, reducing it to 22,000, still too big. So eventually he ends up with 300 against the Midianite army of 135,000. That is completely insane from a military standpoint. But not for God. And God won. There's no way that battle could have been won without God. So he gets the glory. If all 32,000 had fought, even though they were facing an army of 135,000, they probably would have been going around, look how great we are. No, with 300, you knew it had to be God. Verse 9, God commanded that his army have leadership. Now, they didn't have a standing army, meaning professional soldiers. Once battles and wars were over, everyone went home and started working their fields again. But they needed leaders. So God wanted them to have good leaders, and God told them how to appoint those. They weren't to do everything a normal military would do to win a battle. God had to be honored in these battles. Okay, so the instructions that are following are the instructions for a normal battle. We're going to see battles come where God gives a special instruction. But this is for the typical everyday battle. Hopefully they don't have every day. But verses 10 and 11.
When you march up to attack a city, make its people an offer of peace. If they accept and open their gates, all the people in it shall be subject to forced labor and shall work for you.
Okay, an important thing to note. These instructions are not for fighting Canaanites. These are fighting other people outside of the promised land. Canaanites, they are not to offer any peace at all. We'll see, they are to just plain destroy them. But if it's not a Canaanite place, first they offer peace. The word for peace here is shalom. God didn't want them fighting if it wasn't necessary. Fighting Canaanites and destroying them was necessary. Fighting everybody else would be enlarging the territory. If the city answers shalom or peace, then you've taken the city. They've surrendered to you. The conquered city becomes a tribute city, and they are basically slaves to Israel. They have to give tribute. If you see in old movies, you see places, conquered cities have to send their yearly tribute in. Well, that's what would happen. It was a common practice in ancient warfare to do that. Verse 12 through 15.
Now, if the city will not make peace with you, but would make war against you, then you shall besiege it. And when the Lord your God delivers it into your hands, you shall strike every male in it with the edge of the sword. But the women, the little ones, the livestock, and all that is in the city, all its spoils you shall plunder for yourself, and you shall eat the enemy's plunder, which the Lord your God gives you. Thus you shall do to all the cities which are very far from you, which are not of the cities of these nations.
So verse 15 is where it's saying, not the Canaanites. This is not about the Canaanites. This is about cities far away from you.
Outside the boundaries.
Outside the promised land. Because it's a whole different thing. For the non-Canaanites, if you went to war with them, once you conquered the city, well, you start off with the siege, and sieges were not. I would not want to be in a city during a siege, because they were horrible. Some sieges would last 2 to 3 years. And it's where you get no food coming in or out. Hopefully you have a food supply somehow inside the walled city, but eventually that's going to run out. Hopefully you have a water source. But if you don't, your people are going to starve. Not a good thing at all. So eventually cities gave up. Personally, I think if there was an army going to lay siege, to me it doesn't make sense to just wait out a siege. It's just a long torture. But anyway, if they didn't surrender and went through a siege or went through a battle, then after the Israelites won, they had to kill all the men. But you notice here, not the women and children. When it's a Canaanite city, they kill everybody. But here the women and kids get to live. An interesting thing about women in the non-Canaanite cultures around, the Aramean women, they tended to take on the religion of their husband. So if you conquered a non-Canaanite city, the women would become Israelites. If you remember back a long time ago, when Abraham sent his servant to get a wife for Isaac, he said, not a Canaanite woman. You get an Aramaic woman, because she would accept becoming a Jewish woman, where Canaanite women would not. After they conquer the city, then they get to plunder whatever they want. That was how armies were paid. If you'd been conducting a siege for a couple years and you were the army out there camping out for 2 years, you're probably pretty motivated to plunder that city. You'd been away from home 2 years just to take that city. You probably wanted things. Chris, who obviously has access to a computer because she's looking things up, says one of the longest sieges in biblical history occurred at Samaria. The city held out for 3 years against the Assyrians. But again, they were still conquered. You got 3 years of suffering and they were conquered. It's like, why bother? I think just give up early.
Give up early, you wouldn't lose so much, maybe.
Well, if it wasn't a culture that just came, I mean, a Canaanite city, I could see standing for a siege because, they're going to come kill everybody. But okay, so again, God is going to give different instructions for conquering Canaanite cities. Verses 16 through 18.
But the cities of these peoples, which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance, you shall let nothing that breathes remain alive, but you shall utterly destroy them. The Hittite and the Amorite and the Canaanite and Perizzite and the Hivites and the Jebusites, just as the Lord your God has commanded, lest they teach you to do according to all their abominations, which they have done for their gods, and you sin against the Lord your God.
Okay, so again, this is talking about those Canaanites. All those ites are part of the Canaanites. No offering peace, no plunder, destroy everything. This command is really intense in the Hebrew. Total and complete destruction. Why? It's because these guys are so evil. They were so corrupt socially, morally, spiritually. God wanted them wiped off the face of the earth. There were no innocent Canaanites. Those kids, if they were not killed, they were under an obligation to revenge their families. So they needed to be killed. So what about the animals? The poor animals. My granddaughter would really have a problem with the animals. Yeah, the animals. They didn't do anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't say it, but it's likely because these animals would have been raised to be sacrifices to their gods. These Canaanites were so abominable in the way they worshipped that God is going to use the Israelites to bring his judgment on them. Verse 19 and 20, back to besieging.
When you besiege a city for a long time, while making war against it to take it, you shall not destroy its trees by wielding an axe against them. If you can eat of them, do not cut them down to use in the siege, for the tree of the field is man's food. Only the trees which you know are not trees for food, you may destroy and cut down to build siege works against the city that makes war with you until it is subdued.
Notice it says, when you lay siege, not if. It's inevitable. They're going to lay siege. But they didn't just sit around in the camps singing Kumbaya. Let's pray these people just starve to death. No, they would build catapults and things like that. They would try to get the siege going faster, try to tear the walls down. So they didn't drag these siege machines across that country because, again, it's a hilly, rocky country, not good for dragging things around. So they would build them. And what are they going to build them out of?
Wood.
The trees that are around there. But they're not to cut down the fruit trees. They're not to completely strip the land. Other countries regularly did that because other countries weren't planning to take over that land. They weren't planning to live there. The Israelites are planning to take over these cities, and those fruit trees are food. You destroy the orchards and you're destroying your own food. So God says, don't do that. Leave the trees so that when you conquer the city, you have stuff to eat. And besides, the trees aren't your enemies. Be nice to the trees. Those animals are your enemies, I guess. I don't know. Again, my granddaughter would have a heart attack about that one. So again, those trees are going to provide something. They're going to provide food. So all this is about being prepared for war. So how can we relate that to us? National Geographic had an article about the Alaskan bull moose. The males of the species, they fight each other during the fall breeding season. And they go head to head with those big old antlers. And the bull moose with the biggest, heaviest antler wins. The other one, and those antlers break off and stuff, so they had to be good, sturdy antlers. So these battles in the fall, these bull mooses really prepare for them during the summer. because they will stock up on what they eat. They will build their strength up, build the strength up in their antlers. If they don't eat well, they're going to have the weaker antlers. And they're going to lose. We have spiritual battles. We need to be prepared for them. We need to not face Satan with weak antlers. I kind of like it because it means we've got to eat a lot. Yeah, build our strength up. But we have to build our spiritual strength up. We have to be prepared for battle, just as the Israelites had to be prepared for battle. We have to be prepared in our faith, in our strength, in our wisdom for what God has ahead for us. And then we have to fear not, because that was 364 times God says, don't be afraid, because he has that battle. So, next chapter will be another new thing. So, gonna go ahead and shut this off, and we'll do our prayer requests. Chris or anyone else watching, if you have any prayer requests, let us know, and we'll pray for you. Thanks.